They say Christmas is the season of truth, but some truths arrive wrapped in silence. At exactly 8:47 p.m., during a family Christmas gathering, a wife opened a door she was never meant to open. What she saw inside that room didn't scream. It didn't move. It didn't explain itself. But by morning, a marriage was over, a family was divided, and one woman would never celebrate Christmas the same way again. Stay with me till the end, because the real lesson of this story is not about betrayal. It's about silence. Who were these people before that night? How long had the secret been hiding in plain sight? And when betrayal comes from inside the family, who do you protect? Your marriage, your blood, or your sanity? This is not a story about scandal. It is a story about what happens when boundaries disappear and no one speaks. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Esther believed in order. She believed in family dinners, handwritten Christmas cards, and keeping problems behind closed doors. She had been married for 18 years. Not perfect, but faithful. She met Daniel in college, at a volunteer event serving meals to homeless families. He was the kind of man who listened more than he spoke, who remembered birthdays without reminders, who never raised his voice even during arguments. Their wedding was small, intimate, filled with people who actually mattered. Over the years, they built a life that looked stable from the outside. A modest 2-story home in a quiet suburb. 2 kids, now grown and living in different states. Sunday dinners. Anniversary trips to the same lake cabin every July. There were hard seasons, of course. Financial struggles after Daniel lost his job in 2015. A miscarriage that neither of them talked about, but both still carried. But they survived. They always survived. That's what Esther told herself. Daniel was respected in their community. Soft-spoken. The kind of man neighbors trusted with their keys when they went on vacation. He coached Little League for 3 seasons, even after their own kids aged out. No history of violence. No rumors. No visible cracks. At church, people would say things like, "You two are what marriage should look like." Esther would smile and say, "We just take it one day at a time." But sometimes, late at night, she wondered if they were just good at pretending. If stability was the same thing as happiness. If silence was the same thing as peace. Then came Margaret, Esther's mother. Widowed 2 years earlier after Esther's father passed suddenly from a heart attack. Margaret had always been independent, proud, the kind of woman who refused help even when she needed it. But loneliness has a way of breaking down walls. 6 months before that Christmas, Margaret called Esther crying. She couldn't sleep in the house anymore. Everything reminded her of him. She didn't want to be alone. So Esther offered what any daughter would. "Come stay with us. Just until you figure things out." Daniel agreed without hesitation. "Family takes care of family," he said. And Margaret moved into the guest room upstairs. At first, it felt fine. Normal, even. Margaret helped with cooking. She kept to herself most days, watching old movies in her room, taking long walks around the neighborhood. But over time, something shifted. Small things. Margaret started waiting up for Daniel to come home from work. She'd have his favorite tea ready. She'd laugh a little too hard at his jokes. And Daniel, he started checking on her more. "Just making sure Mom's okay," he'd say. Esther noticed. But she didn't say anything. Because what was there to say? Her mother was grieving. Her husband was being kind. That's what family does, right? The house was full that Christmas Eve. Esther's brother flew in from Denver with his wife and 2 kids. A few close friends from church stopped by. The dining table was covered in food, homemade rolls, honey-glazed ham, cranberry sauce from scratch. Christmas music played softly in the background. Laughter filled the rooms. Esther moved through the evening like a conductor, refilling drinks, clearing plates, making sure everyone felt welcome. This was her gift, creating warmth, making people feel at home. But around 8:30, she realized something. Daniel wasn't in the living room. Neither was her mother. At first, she brushed it off. Maybe he was helping her with something. Maybe she wasn't feeling well. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Esther excused herself from a conversation and walked upstairs. The hallway was quiet. Too quiet. She stopped outside the guest room. The door was slightly open. Not locked. Not closed. Just open. She pushed it gently. And inside, she saw a moment that should never exist. 2 people frozen in guilt. Too close. Too quiet. Too aware. Her mother, sitting on the edge of the bed. Her husband, standing near her, hand on her shoulder. Both of them staring at Esther like children caught stealing. No explanation. No movement. Just understanding. And that's when Esther realized. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a choice. A pattern. A secret that had been living in her house, under her roof, behind her back. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't demand answers. She just stepped back, closed the door, and walked downstairs. Her brother asked if everything was okay. She smiled and said, "Yeah, just checking on Mom." But inside, her chest felt like it was caving in. Her hands were shaking. Her mind was racing, replaying every moment, every glance, every time Daniel said he was just helping Mom. Every time Margaret said, "Your husband is such a good man." And Esther sat back down at the table, surrounded by family and friends, and pretended. Because that's what she had been doing all along. Pretending everything was fine. If this story has your heart racing, comment, "I'm still watching." Some stories demand witnesses. Esther didn't sleep that night. She lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle into silence. Upstairs, she could hear footsteps. Whispers. A door closing softly. She wanted to scream. She wanted to storm upstairs and demand the truth. But something inside her had already shut down. Because deep down, she already knew. This wasn't the first time. It couldn't be. You don't stumble into that kind of moment. You build it. Slowly. Quietly. Over weeks. Maybe months. And the worst part? She had sensed it. She had felt something off. But she ignored it. Because acknowledging it meant facing it. And facing it meant losing everything. The next morning, Christmas Day, the house felt different. Colder. Her brother's family left early, sensing tension they couldn't name. Friends texted asking if everything was okay. Esther responded with emojis and short replies. Daniel avoided her. He busied himself with cleaning, taking out trash, anything to stay out of the same room. Margaret stayed in the guest room most of the day. At one point, Esther heard her crying through the door. But she didn't knock. She didn't comfort her. She just walked past. Because how do you comfort someone who betrayed you? That evening, Esther finally spoke. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just asked one question. How long? Daniel looked at her. And for the first time in 18 years, she didn't recognize his face. Esther, it's not what you think. How long? He didn't answer. Margaret came downstairs. Her eyes were red, swollen. Sweetie, please. Let me explain. But Esther held up her hand. I don't want explanations. I want the truth. How long has this been happening? Silence. And in that silence, Esther understood. It didn't matter how long. It didn't matter how it started. It had happened. And it had happened in her home. With her mother. And her husband. Two people she trusted more than anyone in the world. Over the next few weeks, Esther moved through her days like a ghost. She went to work. She answered emails. She smiled at coworkers. But inside, she felt hollow. Friends from church reached out. We haven't seen you in a while. Is everything okay? She made excuses. Work stress. Family stuff. The truth was too heavy to say out loud. Because saying it made it real. And making it real meant accepting that her life, as she knew it, was over. Daniel tried to talk to her. Multiple times. He'd sit at the edge of the bed and say things like, I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. I was confused. But Esther didn't respond. Because those words meant nothing. It just happened doesn't cover months of lies. I was confused doesn't explain betrayal. And I never meant to hurt you. That was the cruelest lie of all. Because he did hurt her. Every single day, he chose silence. Every single day, he let her believe in a marriage that didn't exist. Margaret tried too. She wrote Esther letters. Long, tearful apologies filled with words like lonely and vulnerable and I never wanted this. But Esther didn't read them. She collected them in a drawer and locked it. Because forgiveness wasn't something she could give. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What shocked Esther most wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the realization that she had been living in a house full of strangers. People she thought she knew. People she thought loved her. And all along, they were capable of this. How do you recover from that? How do you trust again? How do you look in the mirror and not blame yourself for missing the signs? 3 weeks after Christmas, Esther was cleaning out the guest room. Margaret had moved out quietly, staying with Esther's brother temporarily. Esther wasn't sure where her mother would go next. And honestly, she didn't care. As she packed Margaret's things into boxes, she found something tucked between the mattress and the bed frame. A letter. unopened, addressed to Daniel. Esther stared at it for a long time. Part of her wanted to burn it, throw it away, pretend she never saw it. But another part of her, the part that needed to know, couldn't let it go. She opened it, and what she read shattered her all over again. The letter wasn't recent. It was dated 8 months earlier, 2 months after Margaret moved in. In it, Margaret wrote about how much she appreciated Daniel's kindness, how he made her feel seen again, how she hadn't felt this way since Esther's father passed. And then, toward the end, she wrote something that made Esther's blood run cold. I know this is wrong. I know we should stop, but I can't, and I don't think you want to either. Esther sat on the floor, letter in hand, and finally let herself cry. Because this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a choice, made again and again, hidden behind words like helping and family. And Esther had been living in the middle of it, blind, trusting, believing in people who had already decided she didn't matter. That night, Esther confronted Daniel one last time. She didn't shout. She didn't throw things. She just handed him the letter. I found this. Daniel read it. His face went pale. Esther, I don't. Her voice was steady, calm. I don't need to hear it anymore. I just need you to know that I know. I know this wasn't one night. I know this wasn't an accident. And I know you let me believe I was crazy for feeling something was wrong. Daniel tried to reach for her hand. She pulled away. I want you out of this house by the end of the week. Esther, please. I'm done, Daniel. I'm done pretending. I'm done protecting you. I'm done. Esther filed for divorce in February. No drama. No public spectacle. Just paperwork. Signatures. Division of assets. Daniel moved into an apartment across town. Margaret eventually moved to a senior community 2 hours away. They didn't speak. Not for months. Not for years. Esther's brother tried to mediate once. Mom's really struggling. Maybe you could just talk to her. But Esther refused. I don't owe her my pain. And I don't owe her my forgiveness. Some relationships don't survive betrayal. And that's okay. Esther rebuilt her life slowly. She started therapy. She joined a book club. She traveled alone for the first time in her life. A solo trip to the coast where she spent a week walking beaches and writing in a journal she never let anyone read. People asked her how she was doing. She learned to say, I'm okay, and actually mean it. Not healed, not whole, but okay. Surviving, moving forward, one day at a time. Her kids called more often. They didn't know all the details, but they knew enough. They told her they were proud of her, that she deserved better. And for the first time, Esther started to believe it. Years later, someone asked Esther what she learned from that Christmas. She thought for a long time before answering. I learned that betrayal doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always come from strangers or enemies. Sometimes it comes from the people you trust with your life. And the worst part isn't what they did. It's what you ignored. She paused. I ignored my instincts. I ignored the signs. I ignored my own discomfort because I wanted to believe in the story I told myself. That we were a good family. That we were strong. That we were safe. But some families aren't safe. And pretending they are doesn't protect you. It just makes the fall harder. What would you have done in her place? Stayed silent for the sake of family, or chosen truth? Do you believe betrayal begins with action, or with unspoken boundaries? If this story moved you, subscribe for more stories that reveal the hidden truths behind ordinary lives. And if you think this story was unbelievable, wait until you hear the next one.